Welcome to the American Med Spa Association podcast, Medical Spa Insider. This week, AmSpa founder Alex Tiersch is speaking with Alex Lertzman, CEO and founder of Corral Data.
All right, well, welcome everybody to the program. This is Alex Tiersch, and welcome to Medical Spa Insider. We have on the AmSpa hotline Mr. Alex Lertzman of Corral Data, who we were just chatting about the Medical Spa show, which we just got back from last week. And this was Alex. This was your first time at the show. Appreciate you coming, and you're new to the medical spa industry generally, I should say. I mean, maybe not brand new, but you're new, and you said you were convinced to come to the show, and you did, and I hope you had a great time, I hope it converted you and made you like a repeat attendee for life.
Absolutely. I had a blast. My team had a blast. It was an amazing show, and we were able to talk to a lot of our customers there, and so it was really great. I
Good.
appreciate you
I
putting.
appreciate you
I know
sharing.
it's a lot of work, so thank you.
It is. I think I was joking with somebody the other day that I was at last week after I got back. I thought I'd get a good hard day's work in, and then all of a sudden I woke up like at my desk, sound asleep, not even realizing how I got there. So it's like you just fall asleep because it's like 5 days of just kind of pure adrenaline. But anyway, it was great, and thank you for coming. Now, Corral Data, this is really interesting. I think this Corral Data is it's one of these kind of innovative companies that has popped up as a result of both our industry evolving as it is, but then also just tech in general. It's related to AI. You mentioned kind of jokingly that Corral Data, it really explains itself. You're corralling data, but I would love to talk about what the company is, but then also how you kind of got here, because it must be a new company if you're talking about AI, right? Because AI is new. And how did you get here? What's your background? And so let's kind of dive into that. I'm really curious about how this started.
Yeah, so maybe I'll give you sort of a little background of what Corral Data does. So
Yeah,
we
let's do that.
allow organizations, whether it's a med spa that has one location or one of our customers that might have multiple med spa brands that have multiple locations. What it allows customers to do is connect all of their data very simply, all the EMR platforms like the Zenotis, the Patient Nows, and all the ad platforms, marketing platforms, financial platforms, HR, you name it, we connect, we have an integration into it. And then once you connect all of your data, you have actionable intelligence from the platform that just gives you all the reporting you could possibly need to drive your business. And you could also talk to your data. So you could ask it any questions you want. You could get any insight you want or any advice, recommendations based on your actual data. So we've been at this for 4 years now. So it's new-ish.
Ish, right?
But we started before ChatGPT became popular, so it was like it's been 4 years of
Yeah.
grueling engineering to get to a place where we could literally answer any question you have about your data once you connect it. In terms of background, I in my former life I ran a large digital agency that sold to a very large consultancy that sold to a very large private equity firm. So my background was going into very large organizations, helping them use data to make smart decisions.
Hmm.
In former life, that used to happen with humans. In my new
Hmm.
life, yes, humans are very involved, but it's we use artificial intelligence as much as possible to really make data be in the background of
Right.
this, so humans can be forward in asking any questions they want.
Right. So was Corral Data started in a particular industry? Like was it healthcare? Was it dental med spas, or what was it that kind of got you going in this particular area?
We started being vertically agnostic because our goal
Right.
was if we connect the data, we could answer any questions we want. What we've learned though is, well, at this point, healthcare is 70% of our revenue. So
Yeah.
we've definitely there was no strategic pivot into healthcare, but highly regulated industries that have a ton of data are areas that we really like to help out. Also, really messy data that is all over
Yeah.
the place, hard integrations. And I think in MedSpa specifically, because there's so many
Perfect.
various EMR platforms. The industry is still sort of figuring out how to sort of get to that level of rigor, and so I think that's where we are able to really help an industry. It'll help our customers and med spas because it's that level of investment that you would typically need for hiring data engineers, data scientists, analysts that maybe other industries have invested in. A med spa can't make that kind of investment, and so Corel Data is really good for that.
Right. No, it's interesting because as you were describing the product, it 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 it's almost like you're describing kind of what a lot of folks are dealing with in med spas because we've not been able to figure out how to integrate all of the different components of the business, whether it's EMR, marketing, payroll, inventory tracking, all of these different things are, so we've got different systems for kind of all of them. And what we've seen is some folks are trying to solve the problem by creating one platform that will do all of it, right? Whereas um, it sounds like what you're coming at is from a different angle and saying, "What use whatever platforms you want. We'll take all that data and you'll just be able to use whatever you've got, and we'll translate it into a way that's easy for you to understand." Is that fair?
That's exactly it, because I think change management is really hard.
Yeah.
And you're asking sort of employees that have used one EMR system, let's switch to another EMR system. That's
Right.
hard. Or we've always done things one way. We're not asking anyone to change anything about their processes. We're just informing them so they can make smart decisions and then ask any questions they want about their data and just instantly answer them.
Yeah. So what's like what's the interface like? How does this work? I mean, do you come in, is it just like a cloud-based or how does it all work? Do you just plug it in and be like, here you go, or
I mean, it's literally connect. So for most of the integrations, it's literally connect. So you just click on authorize and you authenticate the connectors. For some of them, like sort of the Zenotis of the world, it's an API key that you put in, and that's how
Mhm.
you sync the data. And then once the data is done syncing, you have actionable reporting that tells you here is what is actually going on in your business. And it's not just necessarily pulling in from one source, but like, let's say, very common question is, what is my lifetime value divided by customer acquisition costs? So I can
Mhm.
run
Yeah.
very profitable marketing campaigns, right?
Right.
Well, that's really hard to answer. Well, lifetime value lives in an EMR system. And even then, it's really hard to get that data out to understand the cohort. But then the second thing is, well, what is the marketing campaign, or let's say it's a Facebook campaign or a Google campaign that actually drove that customer? So not only do you need to understand that they show up, right? So it's not about appointments. It's about did you actually did this customer show up? How much have they spent in the platform? And then can I tie this back to the original marketing campaign that did this? So that's like a
Mhm.
very typical thing that you just wouldn't be able to answer unless you glued or corralled all of this data together. And so that's one example, but also you could do this for who is the first which provider drives the highest LTV for our customers, right? Like
Mhm.
who's the provider that somebody sees first to
Mhm.
drive that LTV, or what is that service, or being able to understand like a profitability of a customer from inventory to all the employees that have touched that customer to really understand customer profitability. And then how do you sort of run a
Mhm.
business based on that?
Mhm. So yeah, so does it's taking in like payroll data and things like that as well.
Yeah,
So not only is it just cost of goods and time, but it's also this is how much you're paying your employees on these particular customers. So you really can break it down to this is how much you're making off of each individual patient.
exactly.
Yeah, that's
That's
pretty cool.
That's literally it. And some customers, they connect everything. And some
Uh-huh.
customers, they're just like, I just want to connect my EMR system, my analytics, and my ad platform. So like we have over right now, it's a little over 600 integrations that we've done. So could scale up or down. And most of our customers, they start off with They'll add a few
Yeah.
integrations and they'll go from there. As they have more questions, they'll integrate more things.
And then it's interesting because again, like it seems like this is tailor made for what med spas are doing. You started this kind of before you got into med spas, though. You were agnostic. Are other industries dealing with the same thing? Or, I mean, because I always kind of thought this was just like kind of a crazy thing that we were dealing with more than others. But that's apparently not the case.
I would say that multi-location
Yeah.
industries are just dealing with this in general, right? Because there's no standards for, like, they might not be using EMR systems, but they're using point of sale systems, right? And
Right.
so the challenges are the same. It's how do you democratize data so your employees can make smart decisions along the way and have access to that data in a really easy way, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think a
So,
lot of industries are facing this. I think in healthcare in general, because we're HIPAA compliant, there's
right.
also like this other and in regulated industries in general, I think when you're dealing with PHI or PII data, like there's sort of like this additional layer that does require a level of rigor that we're adding to
Yeah.
this as well. That like you can't just like, let me just download all of my patients to my computer and then upload them to Facebook. Like that's so many HIPAA violations along the way, right? Like
Yeah.
you're an attorney, so like
Yeah. I
you know
am.
that everyone is
That's the wheels are
probably
already
doing
spinning.
this,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So it's almost like though, um, and it was part of the impetus of creating this for like roll up platforms, private equity that are rolling up a bunch of these different locations, and then because that's one of the clear things that I've heard as an issue is that you get doesn't matter if you get 5 locations or 50 locations, they're all using different point of sale systems, they're all using different EMRs. At some point, you've got to make it consistent. And you're kind of solving for that. It's like, well, no, you don't really have to get on the same system. You can just do it all with. Does your product kind of allow them to get through that without having to all get on the same system?
Yeah, so like our MedSpa roll-up customers, and I think we have
Yeah,
4 or 5 groups of MedSpa roll-ups, and yes, like I think from a training perspective, they want everyone on the same EMR systems eventually, but
sure, sure.
it's a process, right? Like sort of like integration is a process, right?
And for
But we can
reporting, yeah,
come in on literally on day one and not have to worry about that, right? Like literally,
yeah,
okay, you're using Zenoti, Miva, Boulevard, right? Like we patient now, like we don't care. Use
right,
whatever
yeah,
makes the most sense for you, and we will make sure that it's all rolls up consistently for a private equity sort of
yeah,
like overview, but also at this because it's mostly private equity based, right? When you're dealing with
yeah,
roll-ups. And then if you are a practice in that roll up, you don't have visibility into others. You just have visibility into your own into your own sort of either location or brand, right?
right, right. And that allows, it allows kind of in real time the private equity company, each individual component of the private equity group to see how they're doing as a whole and how they're doing individually, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um,
and then a lot of them they're also doing sort of they are able to compare them to the peer group of
yeah,
that sort of like you have 30 locations. Well, how are these locations performing against each other, right? So like
yeah,
you're able
yeah.
to
Huh,
have
that's interesting.
all of that comparison visibility.
Yeah.
Well,
Was that component of it, the kind of the roll-ups, was that part of the strategy for building it in the first place?
no, I think it's just like we are following sort of this trend of people asking questions of their data. And if they ask a
Yeah.
question, it's an interesting question, it gets added to our model. And so
Yeah.
that's how we're also learning about like what do people care about? I don't we have sort of like it's like wisdom of crowds that we're doing as
Yeah.
well because when somebody signs up, the reports that they get on day one today are different than they were 90 days ago. And the reason for that is because, oh, people have been asking these types of questions recently. So somebody's initial reporting looks a lot different today than it did 90 days ago, not because we might have changed anything as humans, but because people have been asking these types of questions. These are more interesting to answer. And so we surface that
Yeah.
information more now.
So then are you kind of taking the total universe of questions that you're getting from all your different clients from the different verticals and industries and say, all right, this is what people are asking, because that gives you kind of an overall institutional knowledge that you can use for the different industries.
Yes, and so the way that we do it is we do it on the source level. So everybody that has these sources of data is asking these types of questions, or
Uh,
they're in this vertical. And so we try not to cross-pollinate questions between verticals too much. Like, but
yeah,
it gets sources, it gets in, and
sure.
we what we don't do is we don't share any data between our sort of like it all lives in its own data warehouses. So every med spa has its own data warehouse and all of that data is guarded. The only sharing we have is what is interesting. What are the interesting questions people have?
Right. Hey folks, Alex Tiersch here, and I wanted to give a quick shout out to our friends at MedShift for sponsoring this podcast. Are you tired of juggling multiple vendors for your aesthetic practice? Say hello to MedShift. It's your convenient, one-stop shop for everything that your practice needs to thrive. From injectables, medical supplies, hands-on training, and cutting-edge devices, to weight loss and wellness solutions, medical-grade skincare, and even exosomes, it's all at your fingertips. MedShift is focused on empowering your growth. It streamlines purchasing and offers dedicated support to unlock new revenue streams that will make your practice more profitable. Visit store.medshift.com and make the shift today. That's store.medshift.com. Thanks so much. Yeah. So that's actually leads me to my next question because you mentioned HIPAA, and with healthcare, you enter this whole other realm. And then this is a question with AI that we've been constantly wondering about, and even with law firms too. This is a really hot topic of conversation because we all want to use AI and we want to be able to use it to utilize all of the information that we have that is highly protected. And we want to be able to have it be searchable, but we don't want it to get out into the universe. And part of the fear is that when you have ChatGPT kind of, even if you have your own account, you're worried about it being hacked. It's kind of stuff is being uploaded into it. How do you deal with that? Like you mentioned, each med spa has its own warehouse. Like how is privacy protected, and how do you deal with the HIPAA issue in a way that's kind of easy for a first grade lawyer like myself to understand?
So I'll explain it in a really high, like, so even if you're dealing with maybe outside of Corel data, if you're generally dealing with any of the large language models, there's sort of the assumption that like any questions, anything you put in there, don't expect any privacy around this,
Yeah, yeah,
except, right, when you are now starting to sign business associates agreements with these parties, right?
right.
And so we have business associates agreements with both OpenAI and Anthropic, and then we go further by also allowing our customers to not even use commercial large language models, but ask questions against their own data warehouse within AWS. But even
Oh, wait, so you have business associates agreements with OpenAI
yes,
yourself?
and with Anthropic.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay,
So if you have a business associates agreement with OpenAI and Anthropic, which are the two large commercial large language models, it doesn't just mean that, hey, we just signed a piece of paper here. It also means that the models that you're able to use are the models that do not retain data. So what they, from a liability standpoint, they don't even want a chance of this data being on their server. So what they do is they offer what's called a 0-day retention. And so if we are sending data to OpenAI or to Anthropic, there isn't just a legal piece of paper. There's also a way that this data is transferred that doesn't get stored. That data is only being used temporarily to
mm.
answer your question. So that's the first thing. The
Okay,
second piece of that is if you don't send data to OpenAI or to Anthropic, you don't have to worry about it. So
right.
what we do is instead of sending data ever to, even though we have a business associates agreement, even though we have we only use models that have 0-day retention on them. We are also not sending data. We are sending our SQL, we're sending code,
Hmm.
not patient data, not customer data ever. We are sending code and we're saying, here's a bunch of code that we've written to be able to answer this question. How somebody has this brand new question that they're asking. How would you answer this question? Help us generate the code to answer this question. And then we get back code to answer that question. And then we run the code against somebody's data warehouse. So we never send any actual like it's not even like we never even send any information. We're just
Hmm.
sending literally code of like
Hmm.
a SQL query to be able to answer that question.
So you're not asking OpenAI a question about a specific med spa's patients, so that they can answer and give the answer back. It's all kind of scrubbed coded code that they will then give back to you, which then you'll translate and give back to the med spa, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, like we are sending examples of what we think is the right way of answering this question via code form because we have a
Gotcha.
ton of examples, millions of examples in our platform.
Huh.
We get a response back in code form. We then
Interesting.
render the code on our end to display the answer for a customer.
That's interesting. And then you also mentioned that med spas have the ability to do AI searches of their own data warehouses or their own servers on their like
Yeah.
describe what is that, what does that mean?
So like we use most of our customers data lives on AWS, Amazon, and there's a platform called Bedrock on Amazon, and it allows us to run mod our own models right on their data warehouse, so it doesn't even leave. So their data doesn't even go like so not even code
Hmm.
hits an OpenAI or an Anthropic server. So that it still uses an Anthropic model that is fine-tuned by us. And maybe I'm getting a little too technical here, but it is never leaving a data warehouse. We don't even
Yeah.
make a call out.
So this is the kind of the closed circuit thing
Yeah, and I think the only customers on our end that are using this are the ones that are using this. We also do a lot of work in pharma, and
yeah.
so and you're also dealing with trade secrets and that kind of
Right.
stuff.
Right.
That's when it starts to make a lot more sense to do that as well.
Right. Man, that is just bonkers. So I because I have so much like AI is just fascinating to me, but it's so fascinating to me that I'm terrified of touching it. But I have so many questions, and especially around the data because it's like I mean, you're right. There's like my wife uses AI all the time, and like my law partners are dabbling in it, and there's all these questions about it, and I see many med spas using it, and it scares me just because I feel like just like you said, things can just get out these horror stories where somebody types in a question to ChatGPT and all of a sudden it's publishing like your personal information or it's going in and grabbing stuff, right? And I'm just like I don't want that to happen. And for us too, we have, AmSpa does a lot of research. We have a lot of proprietary information. We have a lot of data, and we want to be able to source and analyze that data without having it be released to the public. And I've already seen like you go on the internet and like go into ChatGPT, and a lot of our stuff is out there already. It's just kind of
Yeah.
been taken. So it's like it makes me nervous. So you're making me feel better. There's a way to kind of keep it private.
Yeah, I would say like the BAA agreements, like
I didn't know that you could do that. Was that hard to get with them?
yes.
I'll bet. I'll bet.
Yeah, I think like once you're sort of spending a certain amount of money with both of them, I mean,
They'll
it's
do.
like everything in the world, right?
Yeah.
You deploy enough capital with a partner, and so like when we started out, obviously we didn't have, but we weren't doing a ton in healthcare. When we
Yeah.
started getting into healthcare, we had to prove a use case for why we needed BAAs with both, and we got OpenAI's first, and then we went to Anthropic and said, "Hey, we have a BAA with OpenAI. Will you be able to do
Mhm.
one for us as well?"
Do you know, are there many companies that have BAs with those? I mean, it's got to be relative. I mean, I'm trying to get BAs with like Google or Facebook back in the day. It was impossible. You couldn't do it.
I mean, I don't know. It was a
Yeah.
process. Let's just put it this way. It did not take a week or two, and it definitely required a ton of applications, begging, pleading, and all sorts of multiple people getting involved on our behalf to push it through.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But I
That's
also
awesome.
don't think like, look, I think if somebody has like, even outside of Corel Data, if somebody has like, legitimate use for it, I don't think you should be put off by my statement that it was painful for us. I'm assuming that they've sort of also added additional staff
Yeah.
resources to help out because we've had this for over a year now. So,
Okay. Um, I've been given a few kind of technical terms, which I have learned were from your team, not from you. Reverse ETL. What does reverse ETL mean?
oh, so reverse ETL is so right now when you use our platform, you could ask it any questions you want. But let's say you say, "Hey, who are my most profitable customers, and which
Mhm.
campaigns drove this or whatever." Now, let's say you want to send this data back to Google Ads or to Facebook. You typically can't
Mhm.
because HIPAA compliance is one reason, but also just, well, I don't know which campaign drove it. So reverse ETL is a way that we allow our customers to extract, transform, and load this data, but we reverse it and we send this data back to all the ad platforms, again, in a HIPAA compliant way, where we are essentially providing modeled audiences. So we never have to send PHI data back to the ad platform. So I'm glad I'm talking to a lawyer because a lot of this actually, a lot of like our hoops that we had to jump through are more legal hoops than anything
Yeah.
else
Yeah.
to be able to do this. But what it does is it gives our customers the ability to optimize the lifetime value over customer acquisition costs and send that data back to the ad platforms versus a typical scenario before we get involved, which is our MedSpa customers and their agencies are optimizing to appointments. The issue with
Mhm.
optimizing to appointments is one, they might not show up.
Mhm.
Two, they might actually sometimes they call, sometimes they
Mhm.
call, sometimes they book online. So you need to be able to normalize that. And then ideally, you're optimizing to lifetime value versus to somebody showing up because treatments are different and how much
Right.
time they'll spend, like how
Right.
much money they'll spend with your practice in total matters, right?
Right.
And you want to get
So
the best customers possible, and we could send this data, reverse it,
yeah.
send that data back to the app platforms or to your email or text messaging or whoever.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're like kind of in real time able to take lifetime the best clients as far as spend, right? Who are your whales, right? Who are the
Yep.
best clients that you have, and then develop, so that they can develop ad campaigns that go to those that mimic that particular audience, as
Yes,
opposed
and
to an entire patient list.
exactly, and more important, and equally importantly, I would say, is what are the campaigns that drove those? Because what you want to
Yeah.
do is you want to reward campaigns, keywords, ads that drove those whales, as you said it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think the difference between there's such a variability in sort of patient lifetime value, right? Like somebody's coming in
Yeah.
for one treatment versus somebody that's coming in all the time. And those are massive things, but in your ad platforms, you're sort of treating this as like, well, we spent $200 to acquire a customer. Well, maybe you could spend $2,000 to acquire a customer because it's worth it because
Right.
you're getting a massive, massive customer. And so
Right.
sometimes what we'll see is people will turn off campaigns prematurely, or they'll say something is working really well. It's like, but they didn't actually generate just
Yeah.
appointments.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's we've dealt with that in our own business. It's hard sometimes because you have to like be like, oh, I gotta spend more, even though it's an expensive ad, but it's working, right? And it's working, and so you got to do it. But you got to know if it's working or not in order to make that decision.
Yeah,
So it's
optimizing to profitability is like the easiest way to think about it versus
yeah,
optimizing to
yeah,
appointments.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that. That's a really good way to put it. So it's value, not volume, right? Um, what about the conversational AI piece? Like you're able, like, and I'm assuming you said that you had developed this pre kind of Chat GPT. Um, when you did that pre-chat GPT, was it more like search terms? I mean, how has that changed since AI has come on and now that we have AI, what does that do to people usability of the platform? Does it allow them to just kind of type in whatever they want and kind of just get a response back?
Literally, I think the two biggest sort of impacts with commercialization of large language models and the amount of money that has been spent by investors, Silicon Valley, in large language models is speed and cost. So,
Hmm.
speed meaning how quickly we could answer a question that requires a ton of analysis and insight to be able to answer like a question that pulls data from a bunch of different sources used to be in the minutes,
Hmm.
right? And I'm like, well, nobody's gonna wait minutes to get a question answered, right? And the tools that we were relying on were really sort of like they were not relying on sort of generative artificial intelligence. It was a lot of machine learning at the time to just be able to answer some of these questions. Now, speed is, I would say that the biggest impact is
Hmm.
you could actually ask a question, get an instant answer, right? Like that you
Hmm.
couldn't do before. And then the second part of that is cost, right? A lot of these large language models, as much as they charge, they're subsidized right now by investors. So
Hmm.
for a company like ours that relies either on large language models, commercial large language models, or even our own fine-tuned models that live on AWS and those are a fraction of the cost of what they used to be, right? And I think
Hmm.
those costs keep on coming down. And as they're obviously these large language models are competing globally against sort of Chinese models that are
Hmm.
substantially cheaper, they're also putting cost pressure down for large language models to be substantially cheaper as well. And then from our perspective, we're able to pass those savings on to our customers.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's cheaper and it's easier to use. It's quicker.
Yeah.
All of the above. How do you guys work as far as pricing for, I mean, for like a smaller med spa that just has, I don't know, however many platforms that they use. How does that work? Is it monthly? Is it what's the deal?
Yeah, it's just a monthly fee that's based on the number of integrations. So like most
Okay.
of our med spa customers, they'll come in and they'll say, we have five integrations, and then and
Hmm.
they'll say, oh, we want to add one or two, and they'll sort of like, oh, I have to ask this question. So they'll generally ask additional questions. So for smaller med spas, it's very affordable because we're just literally charging them price per integration and our pricing
So,
structure on another side. Like, so it's 350 a month per integration for most integrations, and then we charge a bit more for EMR platforms. Um, and then as you get larger and you have a bunch of roll-ups and things like this, then we're also charging on the user level as well, because obviously we have a lot more support that we need to provide to users or questions that are coming in.
right, right. Huh? That's crazy. Good for you. And then what do you said you came to the med spa show was the first time. What do you think of the med spa industry, aesthetics in general, compared to some of the other industries that you're in? Like what's unique about it? What do you like about it? What are you scared of? What are you excited about?
Yeah.
General thoughts.
It's a great question. I think it's one of those, it's still an industry that is really focused on the practitioner still. And I sort of actually really love that, right? It's
Hmm.
not, yes, there is the business of it. And
Yeah.
I saw that firsthand, but like, there's this like almost like, it's still in this transition, it feels like, as an industry where it's still about the practitioners, the patients, right? Like, it's not those are a lot of the questions that even you'll know, like I'll notice on the platform that are being asked, even by business people, are really about sort of
Hmm.
like they really do care about their patients, about their employees. And I think I really sort of like enjoy that versus some of our other industries. It's like all business all the time. And
Yeah.
I
Very
think
corporate.
that it hasn't gone through that. It's going through this commercialization, and I can feel it, right? And I can sort of,
Hmm.
I'm seeing this even within the past year of us being in the industry, and we've grown, I think, with med spa, our med spa revenue for med spas is up 5x, I believe, in this past year. So like we're definitely seeing sort of some of the questions change maybe a little bit. But yeah, I enjoy the fact that it's still about the patient and about the practitioner versus like and not just all business. So I think some of that's still great.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a great comment because it's true. I mean, it's one of the things that I like about the industry too. There's still it's very much a kind of mom and pop business. You know, you've got providers who are the business owners. It's not very commercialized yet, but you can just kind of see it happening. But at the same time, I mean, people have a very personal relationship with the people that are injecting stuff into their face and doing things
Yeah,
to their appearance. So they want to be confident. You know, the relationship is with the provider, not with the brand, usually,
yeah.
to an extent. So, you know, maybe that'll go away and there'll be more commercialization. But this industry kind of lends itself to, especially with all the different regulations in different states, it kind of lends itself a little bit to keeping that intact. I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, and I also think like the commercialization, like at least on our end, like we want that commercialization not to get in the way of patient care, right? Like or into like sort of that provider experience. We want that to be like
Yeah,
as seamless as possible.
yeah, that's awesome. So, how many MedSpa clients do you have right now as we wrap up?
So we have a little over 2 dozen med spa clients, so
Okay.
still small, but
Still small, but growing. That's awesome. But you've been around for 4 years. What's your how many employees do you have like total? What's your
yeah.
size as a company?
So we're a little over 20 employees, so we're still
Okay.
small.
That's cool. That's exciting. And what's your like what's next before you get to total world domination? What are your goals?
I think like our vision is right now we allow you to literally ask any question you want about your data, but our goal is to also start providing recommendations that people can act on within our platform. So we're starting to do that by sending relevant signals to the app platforms or email or SMS, whatever. But we want to be able to provide those recommendations based on the data that we're seeing. So
Hmm.
customers start to trust the recommendations and act on them within our platform. And then eventually, hopefully, they trust them in an automated way to take action on that. So you connect your data. So my vision is you connect your data and you try, like, after sort of a little bit of a trial run of like a little bit of, hey, I'm going to see what this thing is doing. You trust it to actually start to act on your data so you can make
Hmm.
smart decisions, whether it's scheduling decisions, marketing decisions, A/B tests, like
Hmm.
yeah, in a very sort of controlled environment where we
Hmm.
show you what the recommendation is, you can approve it, but literally allowing all of that data to act on its own
Yeah.
on your behalf.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I see you have a partnership with Advanced Metastatic Partners, AMP,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is cool. And they've obviously been growing. I mean that's great to get in, you know, with one of those platforms that's growing. What's been the journey with them and how's that worked?
So they are an amazing partner. Obviously, they not only take care of sort of their the practices that they acquire, but their goal is to really empower those practices. And I think working with them, what's really interesting is obviously they care about sort of all the roll up information to make smart
Hmm.
decisions holistically, make smart decisions as they're doing new acquisitions. But I think the value that they're providing their practices of leveraging Corel data is a practice gets integrated into AMP. They get a Corel data account. They have essentially a playbook on how to scale and grow. And I think
Hmm.
they are so focused on providing sort of like the business expertise.
Hmm.
So these practices can focus on the care and the patients and and the experience. And
Hmm.
I think like that has been very interesting to see is just like, hey, private equity backed, but like that they really do want to take care of these practices that they're
Yeah,
acquiring. So
that's awesome.
absolutely love them. They were, if not the first, like they probably were. I believe they were literally our first med spa customer. So we've seen a nice, we've seen their trajectory as well. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, congrats on all of that. I mean, you're just getting started. I think this is so cool. And it seems tailor-made for kind of what we're dealing with, not only with the roll-ups, but just individual med spas. We're all, kind of, it's like we're duct taping different softwares together, and it does make it difficult to, we got spreadsheets and we're pulling, it's like there's a lot of different reporting that we're trying to pull, but it's not easy. And to have an AI component that can just do it for you just by getting it plugged in, I think is really cool. So congrats on all that. I think I think you're onto something. Where can folks find out more about Corral Data? Is just the website the best place to go?
CorralData.com, and then we have a ton of both case studies on med spas and POVs on growth, and so plenty of resources available as well. So yeah, and then they could also sign up for a free trial, so they could just see it for themselves instead of
Awesome.
me talk about it.
I appreciate that. Well, thanks for joining us, Alex. I appreciate everything, and we'll have to bring you back in a bit and see how things are going.
Yeah, would love that. Thank you so much, Alex. Appreciate your time.
Awesome.
Thank you to producers Madeline Mahler, marketing content coordinator who organizes, schedules, and handles our guests, provides topics, talking points, and guest bios to our hosts. And myself, Jody Guzman, technology operations assistant manager. I handle the audio and video editing, voiceovers, and tech. Kate Harper, senior digital marketing coordinator who makes all of our graphics and manages the podcast platform. Esme Uriostegui, senior social media coordinator, who makes and posts all the clips of the podcast to our social feeds. Our music is by Ghost Score. Thank you for listening to or watching the Medical Spa Insider podcast. Please follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future episodes. For more information about the American Med Spa Association, please check our show notes or in the description below.